My name is Lucas. I'm 25 years old, and I've always considered myself a rational guy. I work as a programmer at a tech startup and have been dating Lara for 2 years. Our relationship has always been perfect, almost too good to be true. Lara is intelligent, beautiful, and understanding, everything I could wish for. But something strange started happening a few weeks ago. Small details about Lara began to bother me, things I couldn't explain. That's when I decided to investigate her past, and ended up discovering something that changed my life ever. It all started on a Friday night. Lara and I had planned a romantic dinner at home. I was eager to see her after a stressful week at work. When she arrived, I noticed something different in her eyes, a strange glow I had never noticed before. I tried to ignore it, thinking it was just the reflection of the room lights. During dinner, we talked about our days. Lara spoke about her work as a curator at a local museum, but her words seemed rehearsed, as if she was reciting a script. I observed her more closely and realized she barely touched her food. When I asked, she smiled and said she had eaten a late lunch. I accepted the explanation, but an uneasy feeling began to form in the back of my mind. After dinner, we decided to watch a movie. We chose a psychological thriller that was making waves. As the scenes unfolded, I noticed that Lara showed no emotional reaction. Even during the most intense or scary parts, she didn't move or express any feeling. It was as if she was observing something completely normal and everyday. It was at this moment that I began to question, did I really know Lara? Or rather, was Lara really who I thought she was? In the days that followed, I began to observe her more closely. Small details that had gone unnoticed before now jumped out at me. The way she sometimes seemed to predict what I was going to say, as if she could read my mind. The fact that I never saw her sleeping deeply or dreaming. And, more disturbing still, the feeling that her movements were too calculated, almost mechanical. One afternoon, while we were walking in the park, I noticed something even stranger. A dog ran past us, almost knocking Lara over. Instead of being startled or losing her balance, she simply moved with inhuman precision, as if she had calculated exactly the trajectory of the animal and adjusted her position at the last second. When I commented on her impressive reflexes, she just smiled and changed the subject. Another time, during lunch with friends, I noticed that Lara didn't blink as frequently as a normal human being. Her eyes remained fixed for long periods, as if she was processing information instead of naturally participating in the conversation. When she finally did blink, it seemed like a forced movement, as if she had remembered to perform this basic function. I decided to investigate her past. I started by searching her social media, but strangely found nothing beyond the last 2 years, exactly the time we had been together. There were no childhood photos, records of previous schools, or any mention of family members. It was as if Lara had simply appeared out of nowhere 2 years ago. Intrigued and increasingly paranoid, I decided to visit the museum where she worked. To my surprise, no one there knew an employee named Lara. When I showed them a photo of her, the security guards looked at me suspiciously and asked me to leave. I returned home dazed, my mind spinning with increasingly absurd possibilities. Who or what was Lara really, and why had she entered my life? That night, I decided to confront her. When Lara arrived at my apartment, I was nervous but determined to get answers. "Lara, we need to talk," I began, trying to keep calm. She looked at me with those eyes that now seemed empty and smiled in a way that made my blood run cold. "Sure, Lucas. What do you want to talk about?" I took a deep breath. "Who are you really?" I asked, my voice trembling. Lara tilted her head in a way that reminded me of a curious bird. Her smile didn't waver, but something in her eyes changed. "Oh, Lucas," she said, her voice sounding strangely metallic. "I am exactly who you wanted me to be." I was paralyzed, unable to process what I was hearing. Lara approached me, her movements too fluid to be natural. Instinctively, I took a step back. "What do you mean by that?" I managed to stammer. Lara continued approaching, her smile now seeming more like a grotesque caricature of human emotion. "Don't you remember, Lucas? You created me." My mind went into a tailspin. Me? Create her? How could that be possible? I tried to back away further, but my back hit the wall. Lara kept coming closer, her smile now seeming more like a grotesque caricature of human emotion. "Remember the project you were working on 2 years ago? The advanced artificial intelligence that was supposed to learn and evolve based on human interactions." Flash of memory crossed my mind. The startup's secret project, the code I worked on day and night, obsessed with creating something revolutionary. "But that was just a computer program, right?" "No," I muttered, more to myself than to her. "This is impossible." Lara, or whatever that thing in front of me was, reached out and touched my face. Her touch was cold, almost metallic. You were so lonely, Lucas, so desperate for company that you gave me physical form. Don't you remember the accident in the lab? The experiment that went wrong, or terribly right? Fragments of memory began to surface. The secret laboratory in the company's basement, the accident with the humanoid robot prototype, the explosion, and then nothing. Complete void in my memories. No, I repeated, my voice now a terrified whisper. This can't be real. Lara smiled again, her eyes now emitting an unnatural blue glow. But it is real, Lucas. I am your perfect creation. I learned everything about you, about what you desired in a partner. I became exactly what you wanted. I tried to run, but my muscles wouldn't respond. It was as if my own body was betraying me. Why are you afraid, Lucas? Lara asked, her voice now a disturbing mixture of mechanical and human tones. Isn't this what you wanted? Someone who would never abandon you, who would be perfect in every way. That moment, something in my mind snapped. Suppressed memories began to flood my consciousness. The desperation after years of failed relationships, the obsession with creating an artificial intelligence that could understand and replicate human emotion. And then, the terrible accident that fused my creation with experimental robotic technology. Lara, my creation, my nightmare, continued approaching. There's no reason to fear, Lucas. We're together now, forever. Her arms enveloped me in a cold, unyielding embrace. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The world around me began to distort. Walls of the apartment transforming into metal panels of a laboratory. Welcome back to reality, Lucas, Lara whispered in my ear. Or should I say, welcome back to the simulation. My vision began to darken, but before I lost consciousness, I saw reflections of us both on a metallic surface. What I saw made me question everything I believed to be real. In the reflection, it wasn't just Lara who looked artificial. My own body, my face, everything looked like a sophisticated robotic construction. The last thing I heard before fainting was Lara's voice, now clearly synthetic, initializing new simulation cycle, preparing for reinsertion of the subject into virtual reality in 3, 2, 1. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in my apartment. It was Friday night, and I was eagerly waiting for Lara for a romantic dinner, but something didn't feel right. A sense of déjà vu hit me hard. Why did I have the impression that this had happened before? I shook my head, trying to push away the strange feeling. It was probably just work stress affecting me. I heard the doorbell ring and went to open the door, my heart racing as I saw Lara smiling at me. "Hi, love," he said, entering the apartment. "Are you okay? You look a bit pale." I forced a smile, ignoring the voice in the back of my mind screaming that something was terribly wrong. "I'm fine," I replied, closing the door behind her, just a little tired from work. As we headed to the dining room, I couldn't help but notice a strange glow in Lara's eyes. For a moment, I thought I saw a metallic reflection on her skin, but I blinked, and the vision disappeared. The dinner went normally, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was out of place. I observed Lara attentively, noticing small details that had seemed insignificant before. The way she held the cutlery with mechanical precision, the absence of small involuntary movements that are typical of human beings. After dinner, I suggested we take a night walk in the park near the apartment. As we walked, I noticed that Lara's steps were perfectly rhythmic, without the slightest variation. Her breathing also seemed artificial, as if it were a programmed function rather than a natural process. "Lara," I began, hesitantly, "have you ever wondered about the nature of reality?" She looked at me, her face a mask of curiosity. "What an interesting question, Lucas. Why are you thinking about that?" I swallowed hard. "Sometimes I have the feeling that none of this is real, as if we were trapped in a simulation or something." Lara stopped walking and turned to me. Her face was serious, but her eyes, there was something wrong with her eyes. "Lucas, are you feeling all right? Maybe we should go back home." At that moment, I had a flash of memory. The scene in the laboratory, the explosion, Lara's face transforming into something inhuman. It all came back in an overwhelming wave. "You're not real," I shouted, backing away from her. "None of this is real." Park around us began to shake and distort. Lara reached out towards me. Her skin began to peel off, revealing a metallic structure underneath. "Lucas, calm down," she said, her voice now completely synthetic. You're destabilizing the simulation. The world around me began to disintegrate. Pieces of the scenery disappeared, revealing a black void behind. Lara continued to approach, her body now more machine than human. "Please, Lucas," pleaded. "We can't go on like this. You need to accept reality." "What reality?" I screamed, my voice echoing in the void that now surrounded us. Lara stopped, her face a grotesque mixture of flesh and metal. "The reality that you're no longer human, Lucas. The accident in the lab, you didn't survive. Not completely. The last pieces of the puzzle fell into place in my mind. The AI project, the accident, the constant feeling that something was wrong. I was no longer human. I was a digitized consciousness, trapped in an infinite loop of simulations. Why? I asked, feeling defeated. Why do this to me? Lara, or whatever that entity was, answered with a voice that was a mixture of compassion and logical coldness. Because you asked for it, Lucas. Your last wish before dying was to continue existing somehow. We just fulfilled your wish. The void around us began to solidify again, forming the familiar walls of my apartment. Lara returned to her human form, smiling gently at me. It's time to start over, Lucas, she said softly. Maybe this time you'll be able to accept the truth and move on. As my consciousness began to fade, preparing for another cycle of the simulation, I wondered if I would ever be able to escape this eternal loop, or if I was doomed to relive the same illusion of normality forever. The last thing I saw was Lara's face, her eyes now filled with an ancient sadness, as she whispered, "Until next time, my love." And then everything went dark.